Hey, Maddie, what are we talking about today?
Institutional priorities, Michelle. They're a hot button topic in college admissions. A lot of people have opinions about them. I'm going to explain why, at best, they don't help. At worst, they're complete garbage. That's what we're talking about today. Let's do it.
All right.
All right, Michelle, we're starting with a game today. A little,
Oh,
little
no.
back and forth, okay? I did my notes. All right, so the game is Ivy Plus or Midwest State School. Okay, those are your options.
Okay.
Ivy Plus being the Ivy League plus Duke, U Chicago if you want. Some people say Hopkins. I mostly disagree. Stanford, MIT, of course. So the most elite universities in the nation, or Midwest State School, which is a state school from the continental U.S. Midwest U.S. Yes.
Okay.
So what I did is, in particular, I went to mostly a combination of the what we look for page and then just some of the mission statement stuff. But what I tried to find, I basically Googled different schools of different varieties and went to those pages and copy and pasted what I felt were pretty fair representations of what they look for. And by that I mean their institutional priorities.
Got it.
Okay, what do they want in a student? So I'm going to read some paragraphs to you, and you guess, is this an Ivy Plus university or is it a Midwest State school? Yes?
Ooh, okay. All right.
All right.
Pressure's on.
Okay, number one. We seek students whose application demonstrates that they are prepared for the academic rigor of our school's classroom, who are willing to lead, who see strength and diversity of people and ideas, who see collaboration when solving problems, and who make use of all opportunities to figure out what kind of impact they want to have in the world.
I'm going to say Ivy Plus.
No, that's Ohio State, unfortunately. That's Ohio State.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to number two. Two, when we read your application and then discuss an application with our admissions committee, we consider both your academic and personal qualities. We think about what you have accomplished within the context of your opportunities and challenges, and we seek students who will bring a variety of experiences, backgrounds, interests, and opinions to campus.
That sounds like an Ivy Plus.
You got it. It's Duke. It's
Ooh,
Duke who
okay.
wrote that. Number three, we're guided initially by our assessment of five primary factors. A, the rigor of a candidate's academic program. B, academic performance is measured by grades and academic courses. C, letters of recommendation from two teachers and a counselor. D, extracurricular activities. And E, the quality of thought and expression in the application essay.
I'm going to say Ivy Plus.
It's also Duke. It's the same page.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll move on to one more. Our admissions committee and office admissions staff have identified a number of additional factors that may be considered an admissions decision. These include A, excellence in academic achievement, intellectual pursuits, and creative endeavors. B, an understanding of and respect for intellectual, social, and cultural diversity. C, commitment to citizenship through public service, community involvement, school activities, leadership, and/or family. D, integrity and maturity. And E, recognition of benefits of a culturally, intellectually diverse academic community.
That also sounds Ivy Plus.
No, it's Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Okay. Yeah, it's the University of Oklahoma, Boomer Sooner. And again, most of all, we look for students who make the most of their opportunities and resources available to them and who are likely to continue to do so throughout their lives. We believe that you should prepare for college by mastering certain subjects and skills. You can demonstrate your proficiency in these subjects by taking advanced placement tests and international baccalaureate tests and submitting the scores if you wish.
That sounds like an Ivy Plus as well.
That's Harvard.
Okay.
So you got that one. The mission of school is to foster excellence teaching, research, and service to develop a highly skilled and educated citizenry necessary to advance in the well-being of our state, nation, and international community. The university embraces diversity, encourages engagement, and is committed to the discovery of knowledge, the education of undergraduate and graduate students, and improvement in the quality of life and standard of living of those we serve.
That sounds like an Ivy Plus too.
No, it's Kansas State. It's Kansas State that wrote that one. And then two real fun ones. Each year, in conformance with the law, we aim to enroll a class of diverse backgrounds and experiences, talents, academic interests, and ways of viewing the world.
I'm going to say Midwestern.
No, that's Stanford.
What?
And then here's how much I know ball, Michelle. I put in the Wayback Machine and went back to 2019. Each year, we aim to enroll a class of diverse backgrounds and experiences, talents, academic interests, and ways of viewing the world.
I'm going to say Ivy Plus?
No, it's also Stanford before the Supreme Court banned. I read it. I found this and I started.
Oh my gosh!
Each year, in conformance with the law, we aim to enroll a class of diverse. I'm like, no way. And I went
wow.
You can do it, kids. You can do it. Go. It's on the Stanford what we look for page. You can go back. You go to the Wayback Machine, the Internet Archive, and I put it back in. They have it in 2019.
That's
the exact
crazy.
same paragraph with. I'm like, I don't ball. So as you can see here, there's a lot of overlap in the point of this game. I played with my girlfriend did better, and my girlfriend nailed it because her takeaway was The state schools seem thirstier, which I thought was an interesting takeaway on the
Oh,
take.
interesting.
Right.
Okay.
But in general, you could see how this is making a point about my thoughts on like what schools want. Yes, and that leads to the idea of institutional priorities. And it's a concept that comes up all the time in college admissions, especially like online college admissions. I'm sure it comes up in high schools. It's. We'll get to oboe players. There's always an oboe player involved, but there's an idea that different schools, like, what are institutional priorities? It's in there, and I sat here and thought about it, and I put there is no definition, LOL, because it's a vague term that's somewhat meaningless, and it almost always, in theory, it is like different schools have different interests and different priorities of their freshman class. They're trying to build. They have different the priorities of like what they want in their student body. The problem is whenever you try to utilize or like dig deep, like, okay, like, well, what does Stanford want then? It totally falls apart. And that is why like institutional priorities is in no way an aspect of my R like admissions process. So like of R process getting students. And that's kind of the point of this episode, is to break down why I feel so strongly that it's a useless concept at best and like actively detrimental at worst, and kind of how I got there. So part of that is I tried this, and here's why. So this is like Mattie 1.0. You weren't around yet, so like FLL, like homo strategy. So,
Right.
but that is an evolution of different strategy I've tried, and it takes us back to the year 2020, which is like my first big year trying kids into Harvard and Stanford. And my big theory was like, okay, I fell for it, institutional priorities, like, because that was my big question. It's like, well, what does Harvard want? And is that, or how is that different than what Stanford wants or what Georgia Tech wants or whatever? Like, that was driving me insane. And a lot of it was ego driven. It's like, once I figure it out, I can give it to them, like like I just, once I figure out what these schools want, I can and will help students feed it to them. Like trough to a piggies, as I was saying at the time. I get the right slop, and it was going insane about it. And all the time I'm reading about, it's like, well, Harvard has their institutional priorities. And then I would read it, and it was like very vague. It's like Harvard wants leaders, and we'll get to that. It's like Harvard wants leaders. Stanford wants MIT. I remember like Caltech wants theoretical geniuses. MIT wants pragmatic ones. I'm like, oh, okay, and like these are all like, if you read like what do they want? This is the kind of very vague terms you'll get.
Right.
I was like, okay, but how do I actually like how do I use this to get my students into schools? And I settled on the idea of fit, which is kind of a similar concept to this. I think fit is also garbage. Maybe that's an episode in itself. Fit's like kind of on the other end, but that was what I was really thinking. Is like engineering fit is the same thing as initial priorities. I was like, well, how do you do that? And my big guess slash take was that, well, the fit of a university is most likely to be the students who already go there. Like, that made the most sense to me. And you could see how, yeah, because this is why this process, like, institutional priorities are garbage, because this is what I was trying to do. And like, I'm backtracking. Okay, like the college man who's a crazy person who tries to theory crap. Like, okay, I'm trying to use this to like to give my kids an edge. Well, here's what I had to make these decisions. Like, how do you actually like use this? And what I ended up doing is there's a website called niche.com, which I think is actually a shockingly solid, just like go-to starter pack for college admissions information. You just put niche, the school in. And I guess I just put like Wisconsin in here. What I would do is looking through the whole website. It's good. Like, basically niche has at the bottom, there were two forms I found that I found pretty interesting. And they were, let's see here, it was like words after college. Right. So there was it was basically user submitted content, and there were two different ones. For students, it was poll. What one word or phrase best describes the typical students at this school? And for Wisconsin, I got work hard, play hard, smart and sociable, diligent. Then there was what one word or phrase best describes your school? And then there was Badger Pride, Top Notch, Badgerific, and I guess Unforgettable. But like the top three, and suddenly I'm like, I'm on to something here. And I think that might have been part of it. I think I was probably playing around with this in 2019 when I was applying to not your Harvard, Stanford, Yale. I was applying to like Wisconsin's and stuff.
Right.
And you can see how those words are pretty interesting to me. Like, those are different. And what I ended up doing is I have something I call the nuclear launch codes, which Michelle or Charlene can also show here. Let's see here. You'll see me pop it up a lot. I've shown it in previous episodes. It's a Excel spreadsheet with every school in America. And basically, over on the right, like I still leave them because it looks interesting on college when people are like during consultations. People are like, why are there all those words there? But basically, Yeah, I'm sure, Charlie, you can show it right now. Like over now is like there's student words and school words, and all I did is I went to niche for every single school and then wrote down the words. And the problem was I started from like the like 100th ranked school in the country and then worked my way up, and it was working really well because we have like we get like Boston University, we get like some it was like hit or miss. It was because for Texas, you get like unique, hardworking, intelligent, happy to be there, wealthy and snobby, well-rounded, prestigious. What I liked was some of them were negative, and a lot of it was like rich and snooty. Quite honestly, was what. But then, but then like it gets like Boston College, hardworking, beautiful, fit, preppy, driven, passionate, white, and then the school is we are BC, studious, excellent, amazing. And you can see how it's like already starting to fall apart here. So University of Florida, ambitious, motivated, study hard, party hard. Half are only here to get wasted, half are dedicated. It's great to be a Florida Gator. And I'm realizing there are flaws in this plan as I'm already like rereading it because a lot of these range from like generic to like okay, you love the school, but that's not going to be that helpful. To like motivated, that'll be very helpful, right? Like not actually helpful.
Yeah.
Emory, ambitious, focused, intrigued, passionate. Southern SoCal, busy and active, work hard, play hard, studies and parties. And it gets even worse. We get up to Brown, passionate, not gentle, unique, open, privileged, almost closed-mindedly passionate. Right, that one's pretty funny. Pennsylvania, driven, work hard, play hard, obsessively busy, no typical student, overachieving. And then we get up to Yale, gifted, passionate, Princeton, ambitious, genius. So like the higher you go in this process, the less helpful these words are. And there was two. That was problem one. Problem two was it didn't work in a functional manner, and that even if I like there were good words, I didn't have the ability nor really the time to like alter a student's application to make them seem different.
Right.
Like how do I make?
That's true.
That's where it all fell apart. Like even in the practical sense, is like I didn't have the time or gas in me to be like, oh no, we have to redo all these essays, so you have to be ambitious because it's Princeton time.
Yeah.
In years since, I've come to I guess like on my own end have very slight takeaways about what schools want, but even those are very vague. Or there's like maybe I'll get to later. There's a small handful of schools that do seem to have some sort of vibe. Like there's like Rice, there's Brown, there's I guess like Princeton a little bit. But even then is I'm now torn between the idea of like Rice and Brown are the two schools I like a lot because they have brands. You know, like they actually do have a vibe. However, I've pretty much taken a lot of L's, especially at Brown, making students sound like a Brown kid, especially girls. You know, like a Brown girl is a very specific type of girl, and it stands to reason is like, well, that girl is that's there's a lot of Brown girls who sound like Brown girls, and like that's the most competitive way in. You have to, how do you? Even like at its concept, you fail to stand out. Like if you do all this correctly, by definition, I was wrong. Like you don't want to sound like every other student at that school
That makes
because
sense,
then you
yeah.
don't stand out.
Right.
You see you can see why this is why this thing got dumped in the trash. Like this whole philosophy, and I swung the entire other way, which is basically institutional priorities or fit or they're garbage. Like ignore them because that there is no way to do it. You know, I've shown you like I just think the email is like it's all on the website. You know, just go on the website. Like that's well that I knew was not going to work because I read all the websites and I've read enough mission statements to know like okay, so these are all very generic. So that what really killed institutional priorities for me is like I had pretty much given up on the idea. But then I found it was actually a TikTok. I think there was some woman, and I wish I'd remembered either. I wish I remember what she said. But she's like, "Here's the secret to college admissions. You can basically Google this term, and I forget what it was. It wasn't institutional priorities. It was some term that got you access if you Googled around for it for actual admissions reader like training pamphlets.
Oh,
And I was like,
okay.
interesting. Yeah, I was very excited about it. But the fact is, like, I've forgotten what the concept was, and I also don't remember and don't really recommend it because I actually dug into it. And I was like searching schools, and I really should. It was some very generic term, but what you can find, like, you can find them on YouTube. If you, excuse me, on Google, if you just search school admissions officer training booklet, something like that, PDF, and you dig, it's often deep in an archive. You know Google. If you go like the 7th page, and you're like, where am I? That's where they live, and like this stuff's out there, and this would be like a very exciting one. I find like this is it's a really neat thing. And you'll find the 2012 University of Southern California admissions handbooklet, and you'll have no idea why it's cached there. It was for some, it's old lost to time cached internet. So like there's some conference or some handout thing. a decade ago that had this, they put this somewhere. It got cached in Google. It's still there, but like no one, like it's hidden in the web pages. But the reason I don't do this anymore is I actually read them and it was depressing because what it was, because what it was is it was basically what they all say. It's like we're looking for the students who have like we look for high GPA, course rigor, that have like that have something to offer our school. And quite honestly, a lot of like, you want to know what the real handbook was said? It was pages and pages and pages of how they wanted to increase their diversity numbers. It was like that is their institution. That is the institutional priority at the vast majority of universities, whether it is like, excuse me, like as in conformance with the law now.
Right.
Like if you
Yeah.
want to know what institutional priorities really are, unironically, or it is schools trying to boost their ethnic numbers. Like that is what their priorities are. And it sounds like it makes, yeah, like, and they were open about it, like not as open anymore, but like maybe this changes because of the Supreme Court decision, but like that, and that's where I was like, yeah, because like those are actual institutional priorities because that's what they
Right.
really are. Those are things that you are actively encouraging or mandating your admissions team to change. And so that's why I kind of stopped that like that's when I gave up, right? So their institutional priorities do exist. Like we're talking on a macro scale here. Like I think this is all macro. On a micro sense, yes. Like institutional priorities, every year schools do have a number of changes they want to make. And this is often where like this is where it turns into cope, because this is where it says if you didn't get into school, well, their institutional priorities weren't for you, and this is where the oboe player comes in. It's always an oboe player. It's like you didn't get into Duke because they want an extra oboe player, and you're not an oboe player.
Yes, exactly.
That may technically be correct. However, it's not. It's never an oboe player. Like the idea is that is less common than I think people want to believe it is. These schools don't change that much. There's a reason their 2012 handbooklet reads a lot like the ones today. Is these schools are slow moving machines, and they generally want pretty similar things every single year. Like the one take I've had that I kind of wore off, but I used to like, maybe you could remember for next year, is I used to like for white school content, which is kind of come in, is students that anything that's new. If there's like a new art building or a new program, or in the last year or two, they've instituted something that obviously was expensive and took a lot of work to get going. I do believe there's an institutional priority to accept students that are going to take full advantage of it.
Yeah, that's a
And
good
that
point.
is like that is one like news you can use about whole is like I do like new stuff on campus because that makes sense to me. And like initial priority, you have to imagine it is actually a boss man coming in, like higher up, saying like, okay, this year, like you have to accept more students who do this, and they'll follow it. But that's kind of rare. And that boss man's not coming in. It's like, we need a new oboe player. Oboe player's gone. That's not how it works. Like these are billion-dollar corporations. They don't care that much about like the band. They just like, and it's for that oboe player to show up. That is now screwing with like the gums of the system. Like enterprise minorities, they're annoying to people who work there because it is easier to accept the exact same breakdown of students they accepted the year before, unless there's a very good reason to change it. Like, for example, I believe institutional priorities schools are accepting more computer science students than they were in years past because these schools have upped their numbers of labs and slots, and they've probably toned down pretty evenly other slots. So now it's like, okay, we now accept 5% fewer liberal arts students. We accept 5% more computer science engineering students. Like those are institutional priorities. They're kind of, when they happen, they're very boring and slow moving and like that. Like they are big time corporate decisions that are not like, they may be real, but you'll never know about them. Like I don't know. Like they're very quiet. But there's not a big deal about it. And also, they're simply not terribly relevant towards your ability to get into schools, any student ability to get into schools, or what you should be doing to try to play against them. Like that's my takeaway. And what does that lead to? Is like I this might be me going too far the other way, but I am now of the belief that like, what do colleges want then? Like if they don't change. It's actually been quite freeing for me. I swung the entire way. I believe that every school wants the exact same thing. And that is a very core philosophy of me applying to students, is that every single school, no matter who they are, no matter what they claim, no matter what's happening, they all want the exact same thing in a student. And I believe that more and more is that it's simply the fact that you don't have to, like, I have my own results. You can simply go watch college YouTube videos, or go to like the college results subreddit or what have you. Students who get into a Harvard or Stanford, they get in everywhere. I mean, they get in, they overperform. Students who don't get into students who get into Dartmouth also often get into Cornell and USC and schools of like kind of that nature, but don't get into schools above that. Like there is a undeniable overlap in acceptances that is entirely ranked on the overall strength of the applicant. So much so that it is hard to believe that it is the personality or the fit or the slotting of said applicant that is what has gotten them into so many schools, except that they are a strong applicant overall, and that like, and assuming every school wants the same thing, like they all want that student. Like that is my overall takeaway. And
That makes
some of
sense.
that
Yeah.
might just be me trying to oversimplify things to make my job a little bit easier, and it does. Like it does make my job easier to truly believe that. Um, but every school has fallen by the wayside eventually, and like they're obviously going to be like they're going to be caveats. Like MIT, I believe they want you to do won national competitions and like be an RSI and stuff. You know, like I do believe that there's a benefit to being more. But even though anytime I talk about like actually playing it, it almost feels like tea leaf reading. Like I think Stanford wants to do community service, and I believe that because they have three questions about it. Like you can read the supplements, and that is probably the closest I get to be like, well, what? That's why I like the supplements every year. That is like okay, what is the school like really thinking? What has changed? Like okay, they have a new question. Columbia just straight up used to just ask about the core in their supplements, then they stopped. And I was like, okay, it's like their priorities were to only accept students who talked about the core, and now it's either they don't care anymore because no one likes the core, or it's because they want students to do it on their own. You know, like that's the game I play, and you can see how micro and like pretty much me just theory crafting on my mostly keep myself interested when I do Columbia for the ninth time, and like and for the ninth time have you go do the stupid list of 100 books. You did great this year. You crushed it this year. Um, and if you want to know, it's like, well, what do students want? Well, that's the point of this podcast is to try to put that together. I really break it down into three subjects. This is just mine. One is FLL. You can go back to episode 5. It's like that is the core. That's why I have a core theory of what they want. And then I also include warm, which kind of incorporates like being like kindness and empathy. And then perky go getter. So it's FLL, warm, perky go getter are the three characteristics that I believe every school in the country wants. And that's because these are schools, and maybe that's another way. I'll mention this in multiple episodes. Is when you're applying to these schools, you're applying to be a student at them. And another reason spray universities don't matter much is like every school is a school, right? It's these schools want you to believe that they're also different and you have different experiences, and like definitely there's going to be different changes based on location and maybe the like access you get at those schools. But at the end of the day, these are all they're all they're all very similar just in concept. They're higher education, and they all have gyms, and they all have science labs, and they just do like they're schools. And I think it's easy to fall into the trap that these schools want you to believe that all of these schools are wildly radically different. Well, like think of any other industry. It's amusement parks or malls or grocery stores. Yeah, like there are differences, and like often those differences are based on location and like and price, I guess, but it's the same basic premise, and like you handle them all the same way. So to think that like that you need to act or behave radically different to succeed at one versus the other or to get in, that kind of falls apart when you consider like that these are all just schools, like no matter what you think about them, and different. And that's why just being a perky go-getter, warm, and really enjoying learning, those are concepts that are going to be viable at any school in the country, and that is kind of what I do. And like it's kind of fun to explain my rationale here. Like plan A totally failed, I shot the entire other way. It's like
Yeah.
and I make fun of it more than anyone ever points it out. But like I think like a fair criticism of my students is they often sound very similar. It's like, like there's a vibe I go with, and like certain essay topics I go with, and a lot of times I don't go with that like university because they don't fit into a very nice little package that is like may or may. I guess I like to go around institutional priorities. It doesn't matter if like they want more oboe players this year or more or fewer swimmers or whatever. Who's gonna believe it? Every school is still going to want a perky go-getter who's kind and warm and loves learning. Like that is basically the premise behind it, and that is the basis of where I've kind of taken my overall strategy. It is to and part of that is I completely ignore institutional priorities because like they don't help in the first place. And yeah, I feel better knowing like how much like I was wrong. I don't like being wrong, so I go the other way. What can we do about this? What I note is completely ignore all concepts and institutional priorities as well as their web pages. Do not trust schools to tell you anything about themselves is my basic premise, at least like up front, because and you can play this game yourself. Is I did not pick these to be particularly generic or fake in Ivy Plus or middle or state school. You can go like
They really did
more
sound all so similar, though.
yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Just like you either just Google the school and you can either search their mission statement if you would like, or you can search what we look for is what I Google, because they often have both pages. And you will come to very similar results. And it will likely be the results that I often imagine is under no circumstances use such pages as part of your college application. And that's probably get it as people be like, they say it all on the website. No, they don't. And I almost want you, like, if you read this, like, challenge people who give that advice is like use the mission statement, or it's often with the same tone, whereas like it's like so obvious forehead is you just go on, read their mission statement. They tell you what they want. No, they don't. Like, no, they don't. Like, none of these are in any way, or if at best you're going to end up with a very generic, like not standing out application. It's like you know yeah, excellent. I am interested in, and this all goes like 10x for Y school essay content. And at some point soon, we're going to have probably a dual episode where we talk about like Y school essay content, because it's a good overlap, and it's your wheelhouse. But like can you imagine if I tasked you as students to like go read these paragraphs, and then that's what I wanted from.
Oh no. Not going to work.
No. I don't know sources. Yeah, and like that's the thing is that's when this advice is often given people, is like coming to writing Y school content is to go, yeah, like genuine advice is to go on and read these things and use that, and you're going to end up with an unbelievably generic, not helpful essay, because that's just not how you do it. And yeah, and post this, the next time someone says just look at the website, like post this podcast and have them respond, because like it happens enough that yeah, I guess ignore all stuff, and what you do instead is, yeah, like that is what this podcast is about. So it's often about, this podcast is continue to be about like breaking down stuff that doesn't work, because like you're wasting time if you are trying to decipher these type of websites, like these type of messages, as opposed to doing something else. Which
I was going to say, what a time sink to try to figure out how you fit into each school's priorities. That's just not going to work.
Yep. And I it would not shock me if like, there's just a 17-year-old version of me who would get trapped in this, because like I'm mad about these things, because like I followed people on the internet when I was starting out. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll read the mission statement. I was like, well, and then I go, well, this is garbage. What do I do now? And yeah, I wasted a lot of time and energy trying with the fit stuff. Like I filled out an entire spreadsheet, and probably more why I'm still kind of mad about it. It's like I gave my students bad advice in 2020. Like it didn't work very well, and then until I changed it, now it worked better. All right, so that's one more topic down. There's 7 million to go. We'll be back next time.
Yep, can't wait.
See you then.
Thank you for watching College with Mattie. For more information or a coaching session with Mattie, visit collegewithmattie.com. You can follow College with Mattie on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Tune in next week for more episodes, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.